Hi, I'm Ken,
And I'm Yasmine.
and
And
this
this
is
is
Conversations
Conversations
with
with
Ken
Ken
and
and
Yasmine.
Yasmine. Welcome. We are so pleased and so honored to introduce Lisa Tahir to our conversation with Ken and Yasmine today. Lisa Tahir is from New Orleans, Louisiana, where she became a licensed clinical social worker in 2000. She expanded her practice to Los Angeles, California in 2014 and attained her second LCSW license in California in 2016. She is additionally certified in EMDR Level 1, Reiki Level 2, and is a thought coach through the Institute for Transformational Thinking in Los Angeles, California. Lisa has a private practice and residences both in Los Angeles and New Orleans. Lisa is passionately committed to working with people to help them heal through all senses of the body by utilizing intuition, therapy, energy healing, meditation, Reiki healing, crystal healing, nutrition, sound frequencies, yoga, exercises, podcasting, writing, and teaching. She enjoys speaking on topics related to psychoastrology, spirituality, emotional health, physical health, and mental well-being. She hosts the popular weekly podcast, All Things Therapy, found on LA Talk Radio, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, YouTube, and other places where podcasts are found. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Yasmine and Ken. I am so delighted to be with you both today. I know, Yasmine, we've known each other our whole lives. Our mothers are friends. And so though we don't speak regularly, you've been like in my collective consciousness ever since birth. So it's really an honor to be here with you and Ken on your show.
Lisa, I'm so curious about what led you to this work. As a drama therapist myself, very much so the conversation about the wounded healer is in the discussion. Would you like to share with us what led you to do what you're doing now?
I will. And I think for me, it may be like a lot of people in the healing field. It came from a desire wanting to heal myself. And in my childhood and upbringing, there were some really traumatic experiences for me that I wasn't supported to resolve or work through. And when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I knew that I needed to develop some self-care skills and do the healing work as an adult, as a young adult, that I wasn't taught or it wasn't modeled. And so I went into therapy at 21, and I knew immediately that this is how I want to spend the rest of my life, is providing guidance and support and insight to other people that might not have gotten that for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. It just matters that we bring ourselves to learn the tools that we didn't learn. And there's always hope. There's always time. It's never too late. And so I was really inspired by my own therapist and my own healing path to want to do this and serve in this capacity for others.
And do you find that therapists are wounded themselves, that they come from a wounded place, and that entails them to empathize more with clients and make connections better?
I have found in my personal life, being friends and colleagues with therapists, Yasmine, that a lot of us have had some hard things to overcome and navigate, and it's really put us in touch with the fragility and the vulnerability of being human, and really wanting from a deep place, like deep within, beyond the intellect and the brain and the mind, like really from a heart-centered place to help people heal and be happier. And so I have found that to be true. And I think it's helpful even to even have been a therapist in therapy, to know what it's like on the other side of the couch, to really have an understanding of what our clients are coming with. There can often be some anxiety and fear around entering therapy, like you might be judged, and just to really know it is a safe space. And so, yeah, I do find that to be kind of universal.
With all the trauma we're going through, the pandemic and everything that's happening right now, and isolation and fear and anxiety, what are you seeing as a therapist right now? What what can we do to heal ourselves during this very uncertain, fragile, precarious time that we're living in?
Sure, and having listened earlier to one of you and Ken's episodes where you're talking about this, that where we are right now, and I think that the pandemic has activated a grief process for all of us to one degree or another, and whether that looks like activating old core wounds or vulnerabilities because we are spending more time in our homes versus being able to run out and about and even distract ourselves like we used to. And I think it's bringing up issues that we might have thought were dormant or just kind of resolved even. Like what do we even do with our time now, where there might be so much of it for some people if they've lost their employment or if they are forced to work from home and that doesn't feel like an easy transition or fit. So I think it's activated a grief process of loss at some level of, and I think right now it's really an opportunity to examine how comfortable we are as individuals with the unexpected, with uncertainty, with change, with the unknown. And I think I see this as an opportunity and gift to really go deeper into some of those places. What do y'all think?
For me, the thing that's been interesting is the idea of isolation and depression. For me as a writer, spending a lot of time with myself just writing, I've been able to work through a lot of problems that I've been having or just thoughts that have kind of shifted the way that I would normally think because I spend a lot of time by myself, but also as a stand-up comic, dealing with the fact of not having an audience in front of me when I'm actually performing because that's my connection to the world. So I read the audience and play to them. And doing these Zoom shows where you really don't have an audience, it's been kind of odd to try and find the timing, the relationship, the connection, because that experience of working in front of a live audience is something that fills me with so much energy. So being able to read what the crowd needs compared to doing it digitally has been an odd shift that I've been trying to make, which I basically went back into my writing because it's a little bit more comfortable for me because it's my own source of personal reflection and meditation.
Yeah.
So I found this time that a lot of time that I've had where I've been introspective through my writing has been great. But now that I have all this time to be introspective, it's kind of like a little bit too much for me to handle. And just finding ways to break out of being in my head.
You know, I hadn't thought of that for you as a performer, how, yes, you're reading the energy of your audience, the vibration. And I've attended some comedy shows with the performers on Zoom, and it feels so different. And I never thought of it from your end, like how you are able to manage that disconnect, you know, through this media, the platform of Zoom. Wow, I feel you.
Knowing that I spend so much time, it's like writing is a different form of meditation, being able to sit back on my tablet or with a notebook in hand and going out to the beach and writing has been therapeutic somewhat. For somebody who spends a lot of time not being around people and stand up being the one place where I actually am around people, I'm starting to miss those relationships that I had with at least the comics.
Yeah.
Right now. And every once in a while I'll stop by and see one of them like in my journeys and we'll just socially distance and talk 10 feet away from each other on their steps and stuff, which is odd. But it's been interesting to watch how other people that need so much human contact, how they're struggling right now.
Mm.
You know, Ken, what you're saying is raising for me something I've been thinking a lot about and noticing is how we're wearing masks. And yes, we need to wear masks. Let's wear masks. Yet I notice that I'm a big smiler and I smile at people as I pass them. And I realize they don't even know I'm smiling. And I'm not sure, you know, I've been asking myself, how do I connect even just passing people? And so I try to make eye contact, but you know, sometimes eye contact, you don't know, like, why is that person staring at me? So, and I'm thinking even for you as a performer, if you were to do a show with people wearing masks, it's hard to still read, you know, the facial expressions, how demonstrative our faces are.
Lisa, for me, you mentioned the word mourning. You mentioned that we are grieving, that we are mourning. We're mourning the loss of life. We are mourning the loss of the life that we led. We don't know if it will ever return. For me, it's a renewal as well. It's a mourning, but it's also a renewal and a return to who I really am under the core.
Mm.
And really stripping away those layers, because you really have to find peace within yourself at this time. It's not always easy, but I've discovered that you're really learning about who you are, whether you live alone, whether you live with anyone else. It's really come to you because of the time you have, because of the lack of distractions with the life that you had led before. And for me, it's returning to who I'm meant to be in a very creative form. I was looking at my agenda to see what I was doing this time last year, and it was running around trying to find that fulfillment externally.
Mm.
Whereas now, through the work I've been doing creatively with Ken, with this show, with writing, with working with the theater in Israel, with doing Zoom pieces like that, just drawing and meditating and devotions, and just really coming to who I'm meant to be, rather than seeking that identity outside.
Yes. What you're saying, Yasmin, is so important because it speaks to who you are, even your willingness and ability to view circumstances through that alternate lens. It really speaks to you and going deep and what I sense is, even like, this isn't going to get me down. I'm going to find a way through this. And so it's beautiful, and I think really helpful for listeners to hear that perspective. It really is our choice how we're going to meet this experience that we're in collectively, knowing that it's an extended process. It's helped me to think, okay, this is life, and I'm going to look at it as a marathon, like not even hoping for an end or thinking in 3 months, this or that. Just, this is how life is, like, with some acceptance. So what do I need to do every day to stay on the positive end, optimistic end of things, to care for myself, being loving, kind, living an intentional life of kindness towards myself and others, and just really kind of rolling with this and try to add to make it better instead of contributing to the energies, that make it, it's already hard enough potentially. But I think there are some beautiful opportunities, like you're saying, that you're taking to do some other kind of work and personal development, even online classes. It's a good time. I encourage my clients, even take a break. It's okay to sleep in, and cook some delicious meals and just really lavish in the time you're gifted with that you might have. Because I suspect at some point it won't be quite like this. And to really enjoy this time.
And the connections with nature.
Yeah.
How we had been inside for so long in our offices at the desk, and we are doing that now. But I think people are also taking that time to embrace nature that they had not done since they were a child. Perhaps as a child, I loved being outside, and that stopped for a long time because I was so busy doing other things. And now I've returned to that, and I feel like one is returning to, as I said, who you're meant to be, who you really are. It's just you there, and facing yourself. It's not easy, but it's you're faced with who you really are and what you really want and what you can give to others. Lisa, do you see more people seeking help at this time, reaching out to explore therapy, people who are new to therapy, people who are returning to therapy?
I didn't at first. When the pandemic first emerged, it seemed like we were in like a fight or freeze moment, going back to when something really unexpected happens, how that defense mechanism will kick in. And I think we all kind of froze for a bit. I know I did, not wanting to make any big decisions or changes. And after the first couple of months, yes, there have been old clients coming back, reaching out for therapy, because some of the issues, like we talked about earlier, that might have been dormant have kind of come back up, or there's some new ones that have been they've been managing pretty well, but in this really extreme container, they've come up again, and people have been reaching out for help, which I think is awesome. I encourage anyone listening to reach out to someone for help, be it a friend, family member, loved one, or a professional to help you through this time. Because like Ken mentioned, the propensity for depression is great right now. Even doing your best self-care, even cooking and getting out, it can just feel scary if, you know, to people, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you for having fear or anxiety or depression or sadness. It can just really help to talk about it and be supported.
Because Ken and I had been discussing before how for some people, finding the therapist to meet their needs is not always the easiest thing to do. It's sometimes challenging in finding someone who can really understand your experiences.
You're right.
And really speak to your heart and to your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know psychologytoday.com is a really good website. They have several other platforms like that, therapytribe.com, where we have profiles up and a narrative, and most of us offer like a 20-minute complimentary consult by phone. And now with therapy all being remote, phone, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, it is more accessible, I think, and you can be at your home office. And so I think in some ways therapy is more accessible, though it, you know, might not, sometimes it's a hard step to take. I know some of my new clients feel like, oh, like this is really scary to do, or they feel like something's wrong with them, and nothing is wrong with you. We all need connection. And I think the pandemic has disconnected us and offers opportunity for new connection. Like you mentioned, Yasmine, that we can still stay connected, just it looks different right now.
The question that I had is about this whole stigma when it comes to people of color going to therapists, and the importance of having therapists of color having clients of color. Because I know, just as an African-American man, the idea of therapy has always been viewed as a symbol of weakness. It hasn't stopped me from going to therapy, but it's been viewed as a sign of weakness. And see if you could possibly talk about maybe some of the issues of the idea of therapy as privilege when it comes to people of color.
Actually, I love what you're bringing up, Ken, because I've been doing some reading about that myself and not sure how to fill that gap, because some cultures traditionally haven't turned to therapy. They've turned to their family, they've turned to their community, they've solved problems, you know, from within instead of reaching out. And when they do want to reach out, there's not a provider that looks like them and or understands their culture. And so I can see how people of color, you know, would have a hard time reaching out to a therapist that might not be able to relate or empathize with them. And even I'm reading a book for a podcast guest coming up, a woman with bipolar disorder who writes very candidly. She's also a comic about her bipolar. And she talks about entering therapy. She's of Asian descent, and going to an office with an African-American painting that was painted by a white person, you know, like it just, and she's so funny. And I was like, oh my God, yes. Like how many times, I know for me, I try to educate myself about cultural differences and being open to hear. And I'm certainly not the one to know more about another culture than they are. I don't really have the answer, but I just think for all of us to really learn more, educate ourselves more about cultural differences, our own internalized biases and prejudices, and to really get real with ourselves and unearthing that and coming to terms, you know, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement and the police reform that's so needed for us to really personally address those issues within ourselves, because I think that's within changes therapy. And I'm just, you know, I'm really grateful for Black Lives Matter and the protest and the great change it's causing, because it's needed. It's about time.
Even when I explain to my friends about elements of racism that have happened to me, when I explained to them about the time that I was trying to get into my car because I locked my keys in my car in Beverly Hills, and it was an old beat up car, and I had several cop cars show up.
Oh my gosh.
To try and get into this 1994 Toyota Tercel. And I just finished a comedy show. And I was completely calm and relaxed, and the guy from AAA was freaking out because there were so many cops. The time that I've been pulled over in Santa Monica and had, you know, cops pull their guns on me in my car because I was driving a Mercedes-Benz 190D, a diesel Mercedes-Benz.
Okay.
So trying to explain these ideas of what racism elements of racism that I've gone through to somebody who goes like, well, why didn't you just react this way? Why do you just like, you don't understand. Every time I see a cop, I think about my life expectancy. I think about if I'm going to survive this incident. Even though I've written for cop shows and I have lots of friends of mine that are cops, it still does not stop me from having those moments of, I freeze.
Yeah.
There's no flight, there's no fight, it's just freeze. And all I want to do is survive to the next day,
Yes.
the next moment. And as soon as I get out of that moment, the anger, the depression, the feelings of those feelings of feeling, you know, less than a human being, just because of my skin color. So whenever I've talked to friends of mine that are therapists that have, you know, they talk about the difficulty of just finding clients of color that they can, you know, actually address, and they want to help, but it's hard when society and family and religion has said, you don't need this, don't be weak, especially when it comes to men, don't be weak, man up, deal with it. All these phrases that I've heard my whole entire life, and me choosing the path that I want to be a fully functional human being.
Yeah.
So I had to do stuff for myself, because it's hard to like hold in all that anger, and it causes other medical and physical problems if you don't find the right ways to release it.
Absolutely. And it's righteous anger to have that rise up within you because of the experiences you just described that a lot of us don't have to live with.
Yeah.
And also with women, oftentimes in the past, seeing a therapist, the therapist may automatically associate an issue with a relationship. Oh, you're not in a relationship, or you have a bad relationship, or this, and it could be something else. But because you're a woman, you're of a certain age, they associate the issue. Well, it has to be related to a relationship. And so it's very much limited to what they are projecting as what the issue is. But now I think there are so many other topics that people are dealing with right now, especially at this time. And I think there has to be a sense of empathy and understanding and exploration of what people are experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that as the healing community, we're the ones, and I think as a profession, we're really good about looking at our internalized biases and prejudices and racism. Like, I know, just, you know, wanting to be of service and wanting to be kind of as clear and clean as we can be. So I think as a profession, I have a lot of, you know, belief in our community, the healing community, to be able to meet clients where they are. So again, I just encourage listeners to reach out, and you'll know if somebody's right for you or not. I mean, you know it in your body. Don't override that sense that the professional knows more, because you're in charge of your own healing. So I encourage people to lean into their own intuition. Your body will tell you if this is right or wrong, and just really to trust yourself.
I know a lot of people have felt this sense of fear about spending that much time with themselves and with their thoughts. So are there any particular introductory practices that you could share with people so they could at least start in the idea of meditation?
Yes, Ken, such a good question. And I still use these sources. I think it's so helpful depending on the state of mind you're in when you decide, okay, I'm going to try to meditate. It can be hard to just sit down and set a timer for 5 minutes and sit there. It's, you know, so for me, that's not how I started. For some of you listening, that might be your first step. But for me, I went to YouTube and I started putting in the search bar meditations for peace, meditations for love, meditations for depression. And I found this group called The Honest Guys, 3 words. And I love their guided meditations. There's music. One of them called Morning Uplift. It's only 4 minutes. I still do it almost every day, because it's just like infusing your day with affirmation and positivity. So I'll often use a guided meditation and just close my eyes and just allow the words to kind of massage my brain and emotions. And there's other days where I do feel like I need to sit and set a timer for 15 minutes, or if there's nothing coming up, just sit there, you know, listen to the air conditioning in the background, the cars outside. And I feel like that brings me peace, because meditation, the whole value of it is to take the time for yourself to just be with what arises. And so it's so much, it's in receiving from whatever you believe, be it spiritually based or secularly based, at just a time of receiving and calm, to just stop and pause. And you can listen, you can do a walking meditation. Sometime I'll go walk here in Audubon Park in New Orleans without headphones and just notice the ducks and the mosquitoes and the, so meditations can be while you eat, just mindfully eating, taking a bite, really savoring it. So there's different ways to incorporate meditation, but I do believe in the power of the sit down meditation, be it guided or without any sound at all.
Lisa, I know you've worked with youth. Ken has taught young people. I work with youth as well as a teacher, as an arts therapist. What's going on right now with young people in this pandemic? What do you see therapeutically? And will they have the support they need? Are there means for them to find that support? And what if their parents or guardians are not in favor of their seeking therapeutic support at this time? What can we do?
I think it's such a good question, because I love working with young people, with high schoolers and college students. And I've been working with quite a number of high school seniors during the pandemic and going through them with how they don't get to have the traditional graduation. And I just have to say, this generation, they are so resilient and so resourceful. And I just see them all connecting with friends as they can safely through FaceTime and other methods, and socially distant, hanging out when that was like appropriate to do. I just think that generation is really strong and has some real skills to enter college. And I just see them, they're ready to go to college, if it's online or in person. The ambivalence has been hard, but I've seen it's almost been harder for their parents. Like, their parents are freaking out, and they've been really cool with, like, I'm going to college. If it's online or in person, it doesn't matter. And so I think, like, let's not take that from them. This is their milestone. It's their time. And so I really just approve and like have such pride in this generation of young people with how they're handling the pandemic. I think they're doing a lot better than the older adults.
They seem to be better versed in communicating their feelings and expressing themselves than we were at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't work with a lot of young kids, meaning like 4 to 7, but I work with a lot of parents, and I've heard them say recently that they're excited to get their kids back in school because they've noticed some of their socialization abilities have declined in the 4 and 5 months being out of school, that their children have reverted back to tantrums, to some younger, like even toddler behaviors, in the absence of having the classroom and the expectation and the guidance. So I'm offering that from my clients who are parents, coming to me, just wanting some support around, oh my gosh, I'm so happy school's starting next week, because they just need that in-person socialization. And I had never thought of that, to tell you the truth, that kids really need to be in classes with each other. Like, it helps them grow in so many ways, not just educationally, but in interpersonal development.
So, Lisa, I wanted to ask you about your work with the LGBTQIA community and understanding this idea of the stigma of what it is to come out in communities that have those religious and cultural boundaries that make it more difficult if they didn't exist. It's like dealing with therapists of color, dealing with clients of color, but when you add that other aspect of the stigma that comes with the yin and yang of stigma versus trauma when it comes to seeking therapy.
For me, I identify as gay, and I work with a lot of transgender clients. For you being in Los Angeles, and myself as well, the new LGBT Center, I don't know if you visited.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's amazing.
And they offer free therapy, supportive services for kids, adolescents, adults. It's just magnificent what they're doing. So I think from bigger cities, LGBTQ clients have possibly more access to services that are judgment-free and supportive. I guess your question causes me to wonder about people in rural communities, how that's always been a dangerous place where, of course, there are LGBTQ individuals and people that lack support often live in fear and in hiding. So I think even with the pandemic, the surge of online therapy that every license, every insurance company has made telehealth like legal, and it didn't used to be. So I think it's a real positive shift that people in some of those rural communities can reach out and be supported in a way that the access wasn't there as readily. So I'm hoping those individuals are taking advantage of that. Again, going back to the young people I work with, the high schoolers, like that shit doesn't fly anymore with them. They are so like open and, you know, able to be gay, bisexual, transgender, and supported by their classmates. Like it like wells me up with, like, yes, that these kids support each other, that one, you know, in many schools wouldn't be able to be bullied like when we were growing up. Like they've really embraced diversity and inclusion, and it's so wonderful to see young people just, you know, accepting others and their differences and like encouraging it. And parents too, these parents encourage, like bringing them to therapy because they don't know how to deal with their child being gay, lesbian, transgender, or bisexual, but they want to understand, you know. So often I'm working with the parent almost more than the high schooler, and then sessions together to help the parents communicate their fears. Like this means I'm not going to have grandkids, and that's not the case anymore. And, you know, really being able to help families. So I'm seeing, again, these kids are just really, really articulate and just out there. I'm so enthused about the young people coming up.
How would you define that for people that might not be familiar with the term, their authentic selves?
Sure. You know, I love this topic of conversation, and I'd love to know, Yasmine, what you think, and Kim, what you think as far as living as our authentic selves. To me, it's really giving ourselves permission to speak honestly, like truly, knowing that we still might fear what others think. It's having courage when we're scared and do it anyway. And to test those boundaries, to try maybe with loved ones who you know love and accept you, being your authentic self. I think it's progressive and lifelong. And certainly we don't need to do it perfectly every moment. There's so many factors to consider. And I think the authentic self is a journey of a lifetime. And because we are changing as well. Yeah, Yasmine, jump in.
I think that we return to our authentic selves. I think we start out as from my own experience, I'll speak for myself, starting out as my authentic self and being free and expressive and open. And then along the way of life, as we get older and are influenced by others and are influenced by seeking acceptance by others, we lose that authentic self. And hopefully we can regain it in a situation like what we're experiencing right now with the pandemic, where we are faced with ourselves. And that's how I see that authentic self process, that I had it, it was very present, lost it along the way, and am working to return to it.
I love how you just set that whole yes to that. And I think it is, for some people, maybe they've maintained more of their authentic selves. I know I've known people that I've always admired. They just seem to be so real no matter what. And I know I've had a journey to learn to love myself enough to put out my authenticity. And I believe in a lot of affirmation and self-compassion. Our self-talk, what we tell ourselves, is so important, and affirming messages of how important we are. I approve of myself, because I think the authenticity comes from within, and believing that we deserve to even live authentically. And for some of us, that might come more easily than others. What do y'all think?
I also think that it's so important to start this work young and to find tools to maintain that authenticity. As you said, some affirmations and self-love, and also giving and being generous to give, and still knowing who you are, and you're not losing any sense of, you know, and there's a lot of competition, I think. And I think the competition in our society and in trying to achieve this and to achieve this position and to accumulate that may strip away our authentic selves, because we want to reach that goal. But I think if we can have the tools and start with young people to maintain that authentic self, that you can achieve your goals and dreams, you can be generous, and you can maintain who you are through the process. and you will love yourself for that.
Yes.
That's what needs to be taught, and that's what needs to be learned, I think, beginning at a young age.
I agree so much. And I recently had the opportunity to interview Emmy Award-winning news reporter Adrienne Bankert. She's a Good Morning America host, and her book on intentional kindness, it's about kindness as your superpower. It has so, like lit a fire in me. This book is amazing because she talks about authenticity, intentional kindness, and how it's a choice every day throughout our day to be kind or not to ourselves and others, and looking for those opportunities, like you just said, Yasmine, about generosity, and she said for her, and this was like, oh my gosh, wow, she used to love buying people a coffee at the office, and now that that's not an option, she'll Venmo people like $5 for your coffee today. And I'm like, okay, wow, that's really thinking outside of the box. And she's really inspired me to even go deeper with how can I live authentically kind and in ways that really resonate with you. And so I'm just feeling moved to share that since this topic has come up.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it's been helping people that for years and years and years have asked me to like read their scripts and break their scripts down, because I taught screenwriting at USC for 18 years. And people that 10 years ago goes, I have this idea for this script, and they finally send it to me, and basically able to have the time to like look through it and find out what they truly want to say, rather than the layers of stuff that they think that they need to do to make it sell. It's the clarity of understanding like what do you want to say versus what do you want to present is a key idea as far as that journey into that authenticity.
You know, I have a question for you both that Ken, what you're sharing just kind of birthed within me, if it's okay to ask y'all a question. I wondered if even this show is a result of the changes and what you've experienced personally and professionally and really wanting to connect and be with others, if this show kind of was birthed from that desire and this time being an opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This idea for this conversation, for this show, came from this time, this place, this need to connect, this need to create, this need to reach out, this need for change.
I hear that.
If we hadn't been in this place, I don't think this would have happened.
That's what I was wondering, Ken, as you were talking, even hearing. Yeah. Okay. Yes, y'all.
Because the main thing for me was just like, my grandmother used to say, if you have 5 best friends, if you have enough best friends you can count with on one hand, then consider yourself lucky. And this relationship and friendship that I've had with Yasmine going almost on 30 years has been probably one of the most solid things that I've had, as far as we can share anything with one another and never judge each other for what we go through. And that's just such a rarity. So when we started talking about this, it was like, I get a chance to work with somebody that knows me almost as well as I know myself. The hardest thing about this is basically, what do we want to keep for ourselves and what do we want to reveal? That's after that, it's like, let's just have fun. Let's just do this. Let's show the world what we have experienced for these past 28 going on 29 years with one another. And if they come, they come. If they don't, they don't. Let's just have fun. And it's been great because it's been really, really fun, because me editing and putting stuff together and learning new programs and stuff like that, it gives me that excitement of like getting to work with somebody that you care so much about, and knowing that you have each other's backs no matter what happens has been just a beautiful thing. It's kind of like a rebirth of a reconnection to humanity with somebody that knew you since you were a teenager.
And you're both so authentic. It makes this so good. This is just such a good show. I'm really
Lisa, thank you.
It's so good.
Before you go, we want to talk about your book. Lisa, you have a new book, The Chiron Effect. Talk about it. Where did it come from?
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to talk about it. And it came from a place much like Ken was just referencing a few moments ago. For me, I became really frustrated with rehashing traumatic memories in therapy, and years and still feeling disempowered and the same depression and anxiety. And 4 years ago, I was in a place revisiting some old issues, and I just was like, wow, there has to be something beyond. Like, there has to be something else at play. What is it? And I added meditation to my self-care toolbox. And I started meditating every day. And it came to me one day, Chiron, Chiron. I only had heard of Chiron as Carl Jung's archetype of the wounded healer. And I was like, okay, let me go research the wounded healer. And I was led to, okay, yes, like I'm, okay, these old wounds coming up, I get it. The repetition compulsion, know that. Like we revisit, deep wounding over and over at different layers and levels. But I was like, yeah, got that. And I discovered Chiron is also an astrological placement in our astrology chart. And I just started Googling about that. And what Chiron reveals, so if you were to do your birth chart, and my website has an interactive portion to do that, like your sun sign, your rising, your Venus, there's also a Chiron placement. And that placement is in a sign. Like my Chiron is in Aries, in the first house of my identity and how people perceive me, what I put out there. And Chiron in Aries has to do with a core wounding and one's value and worth. And for me, it's been a repeated cycle of achieving, goals and successes that I've worked, some of them for years, yet never feeling good enough on the inside. So it's certainly not about my outward personality that I'm putting out in the world. It's about my inward. I'm not approving of myself. And so I really took time to go deep with the affirmation work, with really shifting, what am I believing about myself, that I'm not good enough, and releasing those self-defeating thoughts and replacing them with thoughts that I am enough, I am smart, I am worthy, I am lovable. And that just really started me on a 3.5-year path of writing this book, The Chiron Effect, with which astrology is the diagnostic point, but the prescription and remediation comes through psychology, spirituality, and self-accountability. And so that's what the book is about. You'll find your Chiron through my website and read just about the foundations are self-forgiveness, compassion, and empathy.
Before you leave this meditation, notice if you're distracted by an unresolved situation with someone, take a few moments and call this person to mind and couple their presence in your mind with a deeper awareness of how much love they need to feel whole, to feel complete, and to feel happy.
And I'm so happy to be able to share that His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, it's still digesting. I reached out to him after spending a couple of years meditating, like desiring his endorsement, but knowing that I really need to raise my own vibration to one of compassion. Because I did try to email him over a year ago and didn't hear anything. And I knew I have to do the inner work of really aligning myself with what he represents, which for me is really the embodiment of compassion and love and forgiveness. And when I reached out the second time, he responded within 10 days with a beautiful endorsement. I offer tools, I offer affirmations for every placement of Chiron, 4 or 5 takeaway steps that you can activate in your own life. So it's not just reading about it and thinking about it, it's actually, some action steps. And just really to help people love themselves more deeply. I really see that as being an answer.
You are brutally honest about your life experiences in this book as I was going through it. And I wanted you to kind of reflect upon the process of being that open and honest in this book. As far as, did you find it therapeutic? Points in times you found it frightful or scary to be that honest?
It really goes back to authenticity that we were all three talking about earlier in the show. I wanted to put forward a book that was authentic, that was also research-based and some grounded theory. And it was definitely an excavation process for me. It was very scary. I revised the book over 10 times to get it to be where it's enough about me to help people connect and relate that, I'm a person that's been through life. I've lived through things and overcome things and struggle with things so the reader can, feel a connection. And I'm not some, therapist that knows what's best for you. You know best for you. And the whole book is really about learning to identify and source from your intuition and clearing that up, because our wounds block us from having clear intuition it's like we're a little foggy in there. And once we clear out this core wounding and are really relating to ourselves from a place of love and compassion and understanding, that we become more powerful and less dependent on others telling us what to do or who we should be. So the book for me was really a journey into my own authenticity, and it has been scary and it's not out yet. So I feel like I'll have another layer of like vulnerability when people start reading it. And even on a couple of interviews, some people are like, oh, astrology's BS. And, to each his own. I'm offering a paradigm, one of many. I'm not the only paradigm. I just really wanted in my lifetime to offer a paradigm of self-healing through empathy and self-forgiveness, using astrology as a diagnostic tool and language. And then you take it from there with the takeaways and the affirmations. And so it'll be, I'm ready to like get out there and just go through all of this. Like you said, it is scary, but it's also so exciting. So anyone listening, do your dreams, like live your dreams, put it out there. Even if you're scared, just do it.
Don't edit yourself.
Right.
Be free to write it, to source yourself.
Yes.
And Lisa, for people to read more about your work and your writings, your website is www.nolatherapy.com, NOLA therapy.com. Is that correct?
That's exactly it. NOLA Therapy. Everything is there to pre-order the book. It's available now, and it ships to you November 10th. My podcast link is there, an online class on empowerment, sourcing from within, and even to reach me. So thank you for sharing that with your listeners.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for speaking with us. This was fabulous.
And congratulations on having the Dalai Lama endorse this book. I read it all the way through. I think it's an amazing book. And I love the fact that you give the readers an opportunity to opt in or opt out, which allows them to be responsible for if they want to go further into the book, especially when you're talking about your own personal growth within this. You say, I might not be for you. And you're honest with that. And you allow the reader to make those choices. I think that's an amazing thing to do, because the people that truly want to seek this new level of development will get there.
I appreciate you taking your time to read it and give me this feedback. Thank you so much. It means everything.
Until next time.
Hi, I'm Ken.
And I'm Yasmine. Someone just walked by your door.
Yeah. Hey, Jackie. Thanks.
And this is Jackie.
and this is Jackie walking behind me.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.